Good day, learners. Welcome back to the third episode of System Analysis. Today, I'll be talking about criteria for system analysis. To give the overview of the session, under the criteria of system analysis, if you remember, we talked about input, process, output model, right? So under input, I'll be talking about different criterias that would be required for for the inputs like students, teachers, infrastructure, and textbooks. So I'll be highlighting these four inputs. Then under the process, that is the teaching learning process, learning experiences will be elaborated. The criteria will be elaborated. And in the output, that will be the last part of the input process output model. I'll be talking about formative, summative, and diagnostic assessment. So what are the criteria required for these three types of assessment? So let's move forward. Coming to the a quick recap of what the two earlier lectures we talked about. So we talked about system, which has been derived from a Greek word which is known as the systema, right? Which is something that is organized. There's an organized relationship between any sets of components, and basically the components are arranged in such a way that we achieve a common cause or for a common objective. On the other hand, system analysis is a process of examining, improving the performances of a system, such as an educational program, it could be a learning platform, or in other words, the curriculum. It involves identifying the needs, goals, constraints, and stakeholders of the system, as well as it is also designing, testing, and evaluating the solutions. So, the word analysis, so analysis specifies what the system should do. That is why how analysis has been grouped together and we use system analysis. So analysis specifies what that particular system has to perform, the function that it has to perform. So a system, it has three basic constraints. So first of all, the first constraint is that it should have a basic structure or a behavior which is designed to achieve the preconceived or predefined objective. That's the first constraint. The second constraint is the interconnectivity, interrelatedness, and interdependence that must exist between the different types of components. The third constraint is that the objective of the whole organization have a higher priority than the objective of its subsystem. So these are the three constraints on which the system is based. So this is just a quick recap of what we had already learned in the earlier lecture. And I had also shown you a conceptual map. If you remember, the different elements, especially in the input process output model, how they're arranged, right? So we have the input, we have the center process, and then we have the output. And of course, the environmental factors are also important, which is controlling the entire input process output model. And this was basically what I talked about as the black box, right? And of course, with the feedback loop, we are basically there is a constant revision, there's a constant self-correction that is taking place, and we are improving the system. So this shows the dynamism of it. Now, this was in most of the recent papers, most of the recent book, you'll come across this kind of an element. Now, once when I was exploring this and making the slides for this particular lecture, I did come across a paper that was published way back in 1969. That was Knezewick. He talked about system analysis and its relationship to education planning. And it will come as a surprise to you that this image has been taken from that paper as well. So nothing has changed. Now look at the similarity between both the pictures. We have the component of the school in which we have the input, which we have the space, money, teaching manpower, students, equipment, and in between is the process, which is the black box, and all the different how the relationship is taking between the different subsystems, the manpower development, the environmental relationship, student manpower, re-entry and retraining, and so on. And then comes the output. And under output, it's not only the better educated people, we are talking about better community or nation, and we're also talking about improved school community relationship. So, what does it show? It shows that system analysis had been there, is there, and will be there. It is something. It's not something very new that we are learning, but it has always been applied to different systems. And if you remember my first lecture when I talked about the historical development, we do find that it was during 1960s and 70s that the system analysis started. We started talking about in different fields. So, of course, in education, we cannot ignore the fact that how system analysis also plays a very important role in the education. Now, coming straight away to the criteria. So if I just go back again, now what I will do is under input, I'll be of course talking about some of the criterias. What will be the criteria required for the inputs? And under inputs, I'll be talking about students, I'll be talking about teachers, infrastructure, and textbooks that will encompass in the input, right? So with that, I'll start first with the students. So what is the criteria related to the students? So first comes the educational background. We should know the previous qualification, or basically this is where the initial behavior or the initial behavior of the student should be known to the curriculum planner. Then only we can plan for the terminal behavior, that is the output. So what is the previous qualification? What is the prior knowledge? What grade they are in? What kind of a degree program is it? Is it undergraduate, postgraduate? Then we have to talk about the current program, the enrollment, like the subject or the year or any specific specialization. Then for that students, we also, the criteria another that emerges out is their learning styles. Are they visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learning style? So we can basically tailor the instruction according to their preference. Then moving forward comes the cultural context. Now, under cultural context, we have to know the students, what kind of a language preference they have, and the regional specific that they might be having. Technological proficiency, that's another criteria. That means that is related to the device accessibility. Do they have smartphones, computer, or tablet availability? And with the availability, we have to talk about the digital literacy as well. How familiar are they with the education platforms and software? Then comes the career aspiration also. Do the students have their aspiration aligned with the courses, or the opportunities are the opportunities provided to them? That will come under this particular criteria. Now, of course, socioeconomic status cannot be ignored, because when students are coming into the educational system, they belong to some socioeconomic status. So basically, we have to determine the financial aid eligibility or any constraint if they are available. So these are the criteria, you can say, for the one category, that is the students. Now moving forward, the teachers. Now under teachers, now this is a very you can say elaborative or comprehensive criteria I'll be talking about. Reason being, because if you remember in my last lecture, I talked about the role of the teacher. So how important, how vital, and how heavy that, though you could have felt that role of a teacher is as a systemic designer, as a systemist. So definitely, what will be the criteria for a teacher in the whole education system or in the system analysis? So first comes, of course, the qualification. What are the academic degrees, certification, or any area of specialization? Then comes the experience. What are the years of teaching experience? What kind of level have they taught? Is it primary, secondary, tertiary, or the higher education? And the work history also. Then comes the subject expertise. Are they teachers of core subject, interdisciplinary, or are they having some specific research area? Then the content depth, the depth of the knowledge of the subject and its curriculum relevance. That comes under the experience. Then the teacher should also have, the criteria is that there should be some set of pedagogical skills. Are they familiar with the innovative teaching methodologies like We have flipped classroom, we have inquiry-based learning, blended learning. Basically, are they integrating technology into their lesson plans? Then moving forward, other than the teaching, we have to also understand the teachers are involved in any kind of administrative duties. Are they are the teacher participating in the curriculum design, coordination or evaluation? Are there is the Do they have that skills for syllabus design and the ability to create lesson plan, assessment methods and learning outcomes? Then another criteria would be the mentorship roles, because teachers have also to provide guidance to the students for academic and career counseling. So they should have that kind of a role. They should be able to adopt that kind of a role whenever it is needed. And are they aligned with the standard, or are they familiar with the educational standards laid down by NEP, CBSE, IB, or the state board regulations? So this is where we find that the criteria for teachers are, these are some of them that I have listed in the first slide. Now let's move forward, because I'm still continuing with the criteria of the teachers. Now coming to the preferred modes of teaching. So is it online, offline, hybrid? How are they comfortable with? How can they easily, transition from online to offline, and if needed, use both them, both the mode, that is the hybrid mode. Then what about the instructional strategies? Project-based experiential learning or lecture-driven teaching styles. Assessment method, are they using formative, summative, diagnostic assessment? Are they familiar with this kind of assessment? Then training needs, this is another criteria, because there might be some areas in which we would be needing further training, such as using of new technologies or any skill upgradation. So professional development programs attended or desired also come under this particular criteria. Then comes the collaboration skills. Now, ability to work with the peers for co-teaching. You could be designing the curriculum or having a research project. Collaborative skill could also mean that you're also working together with how you're working together with your administrator, with the non-teaching staff, with the technician, with the technical staff, and so on. So basically, the collaborative skill, how you work together, the ability to work with others comes under this particular thing, that set of skill set. Then curriculum insight, that is another very important criteria, because teachers' own recommendation based on practical classroom challenges. This shows that every teachers, they have their different set of challenges, different perspective when they enter the classroom. They perceive the different challenges and they try to tend to those challenges according to their skill set that they have. I'm still on the criteria of the teachers, so I'm still moving forward with the criteria. Then comes the evaluation input. So students' observation on students' learning outcomes and curriculum effectiveness. Every time they are observant of the students' learning outcomes. Then how are they able to handle diverse student group effectively? That comes under classroom management. Communication skill, that is clear and empathetic communication, not only with the students, with the parents, with the administrators, and with any other human personnel they're working with. Then motivation role, capacity to inspire and engage student in the active learning. Then institutional policies, the criteria is that the teacher should adhere to the institutional goals and values. They should be aware, they should be committed to the whole ethical standard of equity, inclusion, and academic integrity. It comes with the package, bags and baggages. If you're a teacher, you should know what the institutional policies are talking about. You should be aware about the ethical standard. Then academic research. Every teacher should be able to conduct a pilot study, should be able to understand, participate in different conferences and webinars, and through her publication, she should be able to communicate with a wider fraternity, teaching fraternity. She can discuss her achievements. She can, and she can also basically, imbibe, or she can also discuss the problems that she's facing within her particular school setting. She can discuss with the different faculty members and try to solve the problem in a very collaborative manner. So curriculum innovation, contribution to designing and updating curriculum framework, that comes under this thing. So this is about the criteria. for a teacher. So we have completed what would be the criteria for students during the input process, the criteria of a teachers during the input process. That was quite comprehensive. Now let's move forward. Now I'll be talking about the infrastructure. Now this is also a very comprehensive outlook when we talk about, because just saying infrastructure, it's not only the physical buildings and things like that. There is a lot and a lot more that we have to consider when we're talking about infrastructure. So what are the criteria? So first comes the classrooms. Okay, the first thing that comes in the infrastructure are the building or the classrooms. So the physical structure is that what are the number of classrooms? How is the sitting capacity within the classroom? Is there a proper ventilation, lighting, or ergonomic furniture? So ergonomic is basically a scientific discipline which looks into the understanding of relationship between human beings and the other elements that are present in the system. So the furniture, how does it, like being arranged in the classroom, that also comes under this particular thing. Then availability of smart boards, whiteboards and projector for modern teaching method. So this is within the classroom. Then comes, of course, in the infrastructure, we have to talk about the laboratories. So we have subject-specific labs like physics, chemistry, biology, computers, and so on. And even in the lab, do they have proper equipments, safety measures? Is there enough space to conduct all these experiments? Is there a regular maintenance? And is it aligned with the curriculum objectives or curriculum experiments? That comes under laboratories. Then comes libraries. Libraries, are there sufficient textbooks, the reference material, journals and digital resources, reading space with proper sitting arrangement, so proper furniture is required for a library. Then access to online database and ebooks also comes under this particular criteria. So your fourth is the auditorium. Now, in auditorium is also part of the infrastructure. Why do we need an auditorium? We need space. So we need space to conduct seminars, workshop, co-curricular activities, and it's not just sufficient enough to just have space. It should have advanced, updated sound, lighting, and sitting facilities in that particular auditorium. Because much of the activities that are taking collaborative activities or group activities, we need space and we need a bigger area in which we were able to conduct these workshops, seminars, and so on. Then the technological infrastructure. So basically, of course, the ICT resources. So are the computers available, the laptops, tablets for students and staff? And of course, when we have the hardware, we have to also consider the high-speed internet and Wi-Fi coverage also. Because we don't want to feel handicapped just by having the mobile phones and tablets. If you're not able to connect online to internet, we do feel handicapped, right? Then we are roaming across the campus just to see where we can get the connectivity. So that should not be there. So audiovisual aids like projectors, screens, microphones, and cameras. Then learning management system, LMS, platform for online teaching, assessment, tracking students' progress, then integrating with e-learning tools and apps. Then, of course, other than the ICT resources, you might be quite familiar that now in the schools and even in the higher education classrooms, we are targeting to create smart classrooms, right? It could be basic, it could be intermediary, or it could be an advanced kind of classroom. So basically, it will be having interactive display board, AI-based learning tools, augmented reality, virtual reality capabilities for basically experiential kind of a learning. Other than all that, having ICT, learning, LMS, and smart classroom, I think you will also agree, the fourth point becomes so important for us. That means we need adequate server space for storing students' data and curriculum material. Whatever we are providing them data, that should be properly stored and it should be properly secured also. We have to ensure security, firewalls, and data encryption to ensure security. Because if you're having all that and because you're getting connected to the internet, and if you're not able to secure the information, then of course the kind of different, like cyber crimes that take place because of this unavailability of that information security. Then moving forward, sports and recreational facilities also becomes a very important aspect in the as a criteria for the infrastructure. We need playgrounds for outdoor games, and even in the indoor games we have tennis, badminton. So we need for both the games, indoor and outdoor, we need playground and an interior, you can say, auditorium for that kind of a thing. Then comes, of course, the cultural space where we are performing different music, art, dance, and theatre activities. Then gymnasium, which is equipped with tools for physical development. So basically, for sports and recreation facilities, we need that kind of an infrastructure. Then there are some specialized facilities. Now, under specialized facilities, we have skill development centers in which we have vocational training and hands-on practical skills rooms. There are particular rooms which are providing this kind of a vocational training. Then we need facilities for research based learning and innovation projects, counseling room for that is basically a very dedicated space for psychological counseling and career guidance. Now moving forward, accessibility and inclusivity. This is a very important point because when we are talking about mainstreaming the differently able, we have to consider what infrastructures are we providing for the differently able students. So under that we have ramps, elevators, wheelchair accessible classroom, washrooms which are for PWD, assistive technology like screen readers, braille books, and audio learning tools. Inclusive environment should also be there. That means we are providing multilingual learning resources for diverse students population. Then coming to the administrative resources, of course, we need office space. We need dedicated offices for teachers, administrative staff, and management. IT support center. That means there should be help desk for troubleshooting technological issues. If there are any problem, we know whom to call, and they should be available 24/7 for this kind of a help. Then printing and documentation. We need printers, scanners, copiers for curriculum preparation and dissemination. So we need this kind of a technology, somebody who will be handling this kind of these devices, printers and scanners and copiers, because we have to make the whole, these are the inputs that we have, the criteria of the inputs that we have to put together in the education system so it can effectively carry on and work. Then comes sustainability and maintenance. We cannot also ignore the eco-friendly practices that are taking place in the educational institutions, the green spaces, the energy efficient buildings, and the waste management systems. That all also comes under this particular infrastructure. And are they regularly, or is there's a timely repair of classroom, labs, and technological tools? So we need regular maintenance. Then of course safety measures. Everybody needs to be safe in that particular kind of a environment, in that particular kind of an infrastructure. So do we have fire safety equipments, first aid kits, and emergency evacuation plans? Especially in those areas which are disaster prone areas, we do have to think about the safety measures in those educational institutions. Then transport facilities also comes under infrastructure. That means we're talking about school buses for students, for staff, parking areas. So of course, space is needed for your personal vehicles, for bicycles, for two-wheelers, and also for the visitor parking. Then budget and funding, resource allocation. Money is very important. We need adequate funding for the infrastructure development and maintenance. Then grants and sponsorship, opportunities to access additional funds for upgrading the facilities. So this is another very important aspect of the infrastructure. So basically we have touched all the criteria regarding the infrastructures, which also includes the physical infrastructure, the ICT, the money, and so on. Now the fourth input that we'll be dealing with in detail are the textbooks. So let's move forward. Now textbooks. Now textbooks must be aligned with the learning objectives which is outlined in the curriculum. For example, if there is a textbook of mathematics, it should cover of a particular grade. So it should cover, for example, 8th grade, it should cover topics like algebra, geometry, statistics, which is specified in their syllabus. And why do we use textbook? The first thing that should come in your mind, especially in school education, we use textbook because first of all it creates a kind of a uniformity. Everybody's following it, the teacher, the students, and also the parents. They also know what kind of content matter is being taught to my ward, to the children. And of course the question, the framing of questions, and how you're preparing for your exam, so you know that there is a textbook that you have to follow. Of course the teacher embodies their ideas along with when they are teaching that particular content matter to the students. So textbooks are a very important input resource. So the criteria would be, it should be also competence based content. That means it should include activities, content to develop skills like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, especially which is emphasized by NEP 2020. Moreover, the textbook should also match the cognitive development. That means, and as well as the comprehension ability of the target group for it is meant to be. So for younger children, the textbook could be of simpler language, it can have more visuals. For an older learner, it could have complex topics with a deeper explanation and deeper with set of examples, so the learner can easily understand. Moreover, it should be progressive learning. That means concepts should be sequentially progressing from basic to advanced. That means from concrete to abstract. It should be moving towards simpler to advanced level. Now moving forward, textbook should also have quality of content. That means the content present in the textbook should be factually correct and sourced from credible references. So like for example, if you take history textbook, the accurate account should be backed up with the primary and the secondary sources. It should be relevant, contextually relevant, addressing local, national and global perspective. Inclusivity is another criteria. That means it should avoid any kind of bias, stereotype or exclusion of marginalized group. And we have to ensure the textbooks are representation of diversity in terms of culture, gender and ethnicity. Then comes the structure and organization. How is the textbook basically organized? So of course the content should be clear and logically structured. Basically, the chapter layout, if you have gone through any textbook, we start with the learning objectives, which is clearly stated at the beginning. Then comes the main content, which is explained in the structured manner. Then in between, we'll be having some examples and case study, which are based on the real world application. And lastly, we should have exercises, which actually reinforces and checks our learning process that is taking place. At the end, index and glossary can also be included. And why do we need that? Just as because it gives a very easy and quick reference to what we have studied in that particular chapter. Then comes language and presentation. Language should be should be very clear and very simple, free from any kind of jargons that is used. Multilingual option should be there. That means include translation in regional language for inclusivity and accessibility. And the style of writing should be very engaging, should be very motivating, so that it's able to sustain the interest throughout the chapters. Visual and graphic elements, we all like textbooks with a lot of some graphics and some flow charts and everything. Why? Because some students might be having that visual learning style, so they like to see something through the diagrams. And especially when it comes to biology textbook, biology, we need diagrams, well labeled diagrams of human hearts or photosynthesis or any classification, anything that can be easily tabulated if you want to differentiate between two terms. So if you're differentiating in the form of a table, it is easy for you to retain the points that are present in the table. So through graphs, images and charts, we can make it very appealing. Then interactive features also can be in the textbook through QR codes. You must have seen, once you study a particular note on, for example, human heart. For example, you study a topic on human heart or photosynthesis or Newton's law. So once you study that, then there is a QR code given. Once you scan the QR code, you will straight away, you'll go to the link in which that video will be present, which will be explaining you about that particular topic. And an animated video would be there. So in a way, it is supplemented by this kind of a thing. So this is known as the interactive features in the textbooks. Then assessment and practice, there should be a variety of exercises, MCQs, essays, short answers, and application-based problems should also be there. Self-evaluation tools, which provides reflection questions and self-assessment checklist. Cultural and ethical sensitivity is another criteria for textbook that should be considered. Cultural context the textbook should reflect the local culture and promote national integration and global warming. So if it's a language textbook, let's have something related to folk tales, poems, regional or national literature. Then ethical values, it should also have lessons on ethics, empathy, and citizenships. So stories in primary level textbook that teach honesty or teamwork, that can also be included. So ethical values also should be, ethical sensitivity should also be incorporated in the textbook. Then comes technological integration in textbooks. Digital format in the form of e-textbook, online and for offline use. Interactive content, that means we will be having videos, simulations, and virtual labs. Learning management system, LMS integration with digital platform for ease of access and tracking. That is how the digitally we can integrate textbooks also. Accessibility, support for special need, because when we have to consider, when we are considering the differently able, so let's think about the textbook, how are they catering to the differently able students. So we should have braille textbook for visually impaired, or we can have audiobooks for students with reading challenges. Then universal design. Now let us stick to a design that is universal in nature. That means we follow a work, we like a textbook should follow a design that works for all kind of a learners. So it should have clear fonts, large prints, and adequate spacing and illustration if possible. So we can have this kind of thing which becomes the universal design. Under sustainability criteria, it should be eco-friendly. That means use of recycled paper and non-toxic ink. So we have to consider this very criteria as well. Reusable edition, durable textbook to minimize frequent replacement. We don't want textbook which is loosely binded or which can easily get torn up, or pages they can separate out. So we have to buy the book again during the academic session. So durable textbook is another criteria for this kind of a thing. So let's move forward. Now, till now, I was talking about input. I talked about the student, I talked about the teachers, the infrastructures, and the textbooks. Now I'll be talking about the criteria of the process, that is the teaching learning process. Now we have come to the black box. Now how all the different elements are coming and interplaying with one another. So of course, here I'll be only talking about the main thing, that is the learning experiences. So first let's have a look at NEP 2020. What NEP 2020 emphasized on learning experience. So first it talked about holistic and multidisciplinary education. That means it focused on integrating arts, science, sports, and vocational education. So that means it has also introduced subjects like arts, drama, theatres, alongside if you want to study mathematics, science for cognitive development. Then experiential learning, hands-on learning with real-world scenario. So project-based activities in the environmental studies to tackle any local issues that are related to the day-to-day life, like waste management and so on. Then skill development and competency-based learning. So we are transiting from the rote memorization to developing critical thinking, problem solving, and life skills. So we have to basically now, in the schools we're teaching coding and financial literacy right from the school level, so that they are able to, these are the life skills that they need, and we are making sure that they are learning this competency right from the school level. Now let's move forward. It should be flexible and modular curriculum. So that means a student studying physics, economics can also switch and study some other subject also, because we are basically talking about interdisciplinary kind of learning. So it's highly flexible. It's like cafeteria choices we have. You enter cafeteria, there are many choices that are in front of you, and you choose according to what you want to, what you are interested in. Inclusivity and equity, that means you're catering to the diverse learners. That means learners with disability, marginalized group, different socioeconomic background, gender sensitivity, and cultural relevance. All are being considered in this. And then focus on Indian culture and global relevance. That means you're talking about value, ethics, and cultural heritage along with the global competencies. So this is what, which of course helps in the character building, empathy, and global citizenship. Multilingual approach, we are using mother tongue and regional language. This is where NEP has specifically emphasized as a medium of instruction in the early stages for better comprehension. Digital literacy in the form of online tools, gamified learning platforms, and blended learning models. LMS, simulation, AR and VR. Open educational resources, that means free online learning materials you can access through all the different courses and lectures on, for example, on Coursera or Khan Academy. Now, what are the teaching methodologies in the teaching learning process? So we have active learning. That means we are engaged, the methods that engage students in activities like discussion, problem solving, and peer teaching. Or you can have a collaborative learning. That means the students are working in the group. They can work on a group project, on the assignment, and it could be in any subject you give them, and it could be in their regular school hours, or they can do it after the school hours during summer vacation or winter vacation. Then experiential learning, hands-on activities that allow students to learn by doing. Then inquiry-based learning, which encourages students to ask questions, research, and find answers independently. So through different examples of different subjects, you can say that how these teaching methodologies are interplaying, are considering as a main criteria in that particular black box. How active learning is also taking place, probably in combination with collaborative learning, experiential learning, and inquiry-based learning. Now coming to the criteria of output. Now whatever is happening in the teaching learning process, whatever learning experience we have planned, now all that is now getting translated into the output. Now what is the criteria of output? Now that also will be considered in with under three categories. So first I'll be talking about the formative assessment. So it's an ongoing process of gathering evidence from students' learning during the instruction to provide feedback and guide improvement. So what basically will be the criteria of the formative assessment? That first, it is continuous and it is ongoing, because we are monitoring the progress. It could be in the form of weekly tests, classroom discussion, and journal entries. Then second, it is feedback oriented. Every time that the child undergoes a formative assessment, the feedback is immediately given for them, a constructive feedback. So basically it helps the student to understand their strength and areas for improvement. For example, a child has drafted an essay. As soon as the teacher gets the essay, she corrects it, and then she informs the student the feedback of that particular write-up. Then there is low stake. That means it does not significantly contribute to the final grades. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just want the child to improve in a specific area. So it basically ensures students to feel safe to explore and make mistakes. So like ungraded practice in mathematics can be also a formative kind of an assessment. It is informal and flexible. That means you can use methods like observation, questioning, peer assessment, and self-assessment. You must have encountered also in your class that sometimes the teachers, they take dictation words, or they ask you to write, and then they ask the peer groups, now let's exchange the sheets with your peer group, and now your peer group will check whether the answers are correct or not. So the answers will be read and they will be making the correction. It could be self-correction also if you have the sheet with yourself, or if you exchange the sheet with your peer group, so it could be the peer assessment as well. Then skill specific evaluation, which focuses on specific skill and competencies rather on the broad topics. Then actionable insight, that's another criteria which enables teachers to adjust their instructional strategies based on the student needs. So formative assessment is not entirely for the students or but in fact it is also for the teacher, because they can plan what kind of instructional strategies they need to improve on, or they can change in order to see the terminal behavior of the student. So you see, remember what I said in the output, the behavior should be also observable and measurable. So this is exactly what we are doing, that through formative assessment we are forming the criteria. How are we supposed to observe and measure the behavior? Then comes summative assessment. Summative assessment, it evaluates overall learning, and usually it is at the end of the term of the module. So it's at the end of the instructions. Of course, there is a learning, it is conducted after the learning period to access accumulative knowledge and skills. It is very comprehensive in nature, and it has high stakes, because usually it gives grades and certificates or progression decisions that depends the eligibility for your higher studies also. It is objective and standardized. It ensures fairness, consistencies, and reliability across all students. It is aligned with the learning outcomes. That means directly access the objective outline in the curriculum. And there are a variety of question types used. We can use essay, we can use short answers, MCQ, problem solving, and so on. So a single paper, if it is a pen and paper test, you can have short answers, essay type, you can have MCQs, or the combination of them in the summative assessment. Then comes diagnostic assessment, which is conducted before the instruction. Now that's the key word, before the instruction begins, to identify the student's prior knowledge, learning gaps, and potential challenges. So it's a pre-instructional, that is the criteria. It defines the strength and weakness, where the student needs to excel or where the student needs support. Customized intervention can be given to them. That means designed remedial or enrichment activities can be provided according to the result of the diagnostic assessment. It is a holistic evaluation. That means you're examining the cognitive, emotional, and the social readiness for learning. It focuses on individual needs. That means help personalize learning plans and set realistic goals. So basically, you're tailoring the teaching strategies for students with learning disabilities. It's non-threatening in the sense that it should not be graded to ensure the students feel comfortable and honest in their response, because we're not grading because we want to ensure that the students, they feel comfortable and honest in their response. So that's how the diagnostic assessment is taking place. Now coming to the three, after the three criteria, what kind of the evaluation process, like what other criteria can determine the evaluation process? So first, it should be aligned with the learning objectives. So whatever evaluation tool that you use must align with the specific goals and objectives of that curriculum. And it should ensure that the tool measures what they intend to measure, which is the content validity. So for a tool, the two criteria are the reliability. That means having consistent result across different contexts, times, and evaluators. Validity, that means it should measure what it intends to measure. So if you're using a physics practical exam, it should accurately access the experimental skills and not just only the theoretical knowledge. So what are the different types of assessment tools that we can use? So we have the written test. Of course, I just have discussed that we can use multiple choice, short answers, long, and any kind of a case study. And basically, we are evaluating the higher order thinking, the app. So we are basically following the Bloom's taxonomy. Then it should be performance-based assessment. That means practical and hands-on experience through project, presentation, and experiment should also be there. Observation tools, that means we're able to access the behavior, social, and the emotional skills through structured rubrics. Portfolio, a collection of students' work over the time to assess its progress, creativity, and effort. We use art portfolios in visual art education to evaluate creativity and skill development. Then oral assessment, that's another way that we are quite familiar with. Viva was the exam and oral presentation, interviews, debates, and presentation that actually, you assess the communication skills, the conceptual understanding, and the confidence. Inclusivity and accessibility. Even in the evaluation process, you cannot negate or you cannot ignore the diverse learners. You have to cater to the diverse learners, which also includes the disabled or the differently able and students coming from different cultural background. So you should provide special accommodations for the visually challenged. We can provide in the form of scribes, extra time or alternative format, for example, braille or oral test. It should be comprehensive and balanced. That means uh, let us in the evaluation should be both qualitative and quantitative. That means objective and subjective method should be used, which also includes the formative, summative, and the diagnostic assessments to get the holistic picture of the learning outcome. Cost effectiveness, tools should be economically and sustainable without compromising the quality. Then engagement and motivation, a very important part. Why? Because when you're conducting the evaluation, we are supposed to encourage the active participation and motivation of the students and not create fear or stress, because that will affect their outcomes, that will affect the terminal behavior. So you have to include creative assessment, like you can have gamified tests or problem solving challenges as well. So you teach, as a teacher, we can be very creative enough to create different kind of evaluation tools which are engaging and motivating the learners. Then of course we can have technology integrated evaluation also, which are very digital tools which are very effective and very and interactive in nature. LMS for quizzes, feedback, and progress tracking. Then comes timeless and feedback mechanism. Tool should always allow timely assessment and provide constructive feedback. Nobody wants a test which takes a lot of time, consumes a lot of energy, because test in itself, like I said the earlier point, it creates kind of a fear and stress among the learners. So we need timely assessment so that we are used to with this kind of a procedure that is taking place. And the test, which provides immediate feedbacks, helps students to correct the mistakes and improve. And lastly comes the ethical consideration. That means you have the any evaluation method that we use, any tool that we use, the criteria, the main criteria, it is governed with ethical consideration. That means it maintains confidentiality, integrity in handling students' data and result. So we have to also avoid practices that may pressure or unfairly disadvantage students. So anonymous grading, that is one way for sensitive assessments. So ethical consideration is something, because students should feel safe when even their evaluation is being done. So you see now, till now, what have we covered? We have covered the input, in which we had the student, teachers, infrastructures, and the textbooks. We had the teaching learning process, which was the middle part, the processes, and the output, in which we are able to measure the terminal behavior. And under that we studied, or we looked into, the formative assessment, the summative assessment, the diagnostic assessment, along with the other criteria that are to be considered while using the assessment tools. So, to conclude, a system approach provides a comprehensive framework for enhancing the educational process by integrating inputs, refining processes, and optimizing outputs. So, by leveraging the innovative teaching methodologies and technology, it emphasizes holistic development, inclusivity, and continuous evaluation. So by adopting this particular approach, educators can, design flexible, efficient, and effective learning environment that caters to diverse learner needs and elevate the quality of our education system. So as we bridge the theory with practical application, so system approach equips us to navigate the challenges of modern education with precision and with purpose. This is all, dear learners, regarding the criteria of a very detailed, comprehensive criteria of system analysis. These are the references for your further reading. If you want to refer to these books, you can refer to these books for the referring to the criteria of system analysis. So with this, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your patience listening, and have a very happy learning and a good day ahead. Thank you.